The gunmen move in as more Palestinian demonstrators are killed. Rail track boss's surprise appearance at Hatfield Memorial Service. And the man taking over as England manager, but for one match only.
From ITN, the ITV Weekend News with Nicholas Owen.
Good evening. 3 more Palestinians, including a 14-year-old boy, died today during increasingly heavy exchanges of gunfire at flashpoints in the West Bank and Gaza. In Ramallah, machine guns were fired from both sides as stone-throwing demonstrators and Israeli troops clashed in yet another wave of violence. Our Middle East correspondent John Irvine reports.
If anything, the fighting has intensified, and it's no longer the stone throwers and petrol bombers who are dominating events here. This afternoon, this familiar flashpoint in Ramallah became the West Bank's sniper alley. The air was filled with rifle cracks and the smell of cordite. As we arrived, we could hear the sound of heavy caliber machine guns. This was not a riot, it was a gun battle.
Under the truce agreement negotiated in Egypt last week, what was envisaged was the two sides putting more distance between themselves. But as you can see and hear, that simply hasn't happened. That's the sound of Israeli and Palestinian machine gunners exchanging fire from apartment blocks just over here.
And these were the scenes elsewhere in the occupied territories. Among the dead of today is a 14-year-old Palestinian boy killed in Gaza. All this as Arab countries declared they may consider cutting ties with Israel, a response to the violence that has been condemned by even moderate Palestinians who say it falls far short of their expectations. The Israelis have effectively suspended their involvement in the peace process, so politicians on both sides remain at loggerheads. Despite their mounting losses, it's the street fighters who still hold the initiative, and no one knows how or when it will be wrestled from them. John Irvine, ITN, Ramallah, on the West Bank.
And Israeli and Palestinian leaders appear to be further apart than ever tonight after a bitter exchange of words. Israel's Prime Minister Ehud Barak called for a timeout to reassess the peace process. That produced a furious response from Yasser Arafat, who said anyone who opposed the Palestinians' quest for an independent state could go to hell.
My response is our people is continuing their road to Jerusalem, the capital of our independent Palestinian state. To accept or not to accept, let him go to hell.
Railtrack's Chief Executive Gerald Corbett unexpectedly took part in a memorial service for the victims of the Hatfield train crash this afternoon. Earlier, the government promised more investment to improve rail safety. Juliet Bremner reports.
They'd come to pray for those who died in the crash on the outskirts of their town. In their midst, the beleaguered Chief Executive of Railtrack. Gerald Corbett hadn't been expected at a service dedicated to men who lost their lives in an accident for which many believe his company shares some of the blame. Even as the victims were remembered, engineers surveyed the most badly damaged carriages, which are still strewn along the side of the track. The legacy of this crash is certain to be a greater emphasis on safety. As if to underline that, the rail regulator will tomorrow announce an additional £1 billion in grants, primarily to be targeted at track improvements and maintenance. The promise of further investment hasn't silenced government critics, who insist money is only part of the solution.
Of course cash will help, of course reorganisation will help, but cash didn't cause this problem. 10 months ago, they discovered that faulty rail, couldn't be tested by ultrasound, they didn't fix it for 10 months, they didn't even put a speed limit on for 10 months. That's a problem of competence, not cash.
The main East Coast line at Hatfield is expected to remain closed for at least another week, but it'll take far longer for the rail industry to agree the radical reform that's needed to prevent further loss of life. Juliet Bremner, ITN, Hatfield.
Relatives of people with the human form of mad cow disease today welcome news that they could receive millions of pounds in compensation. An announcement's expected when the report on the BSE inquiry, which ministers have already received, is published on Thursday. It's expected to criticise strongly former Conservative ministers for the way they handled the crisis. The Football Association has appointed Peter Taylor, the Leicester City manager, to take charge of the England team, but for just one match. FA bosses said they would start to approach the 3 candidates on their shortlist to become full-time manager this week. Guy Smith explains.
It's a difficult search. The Football Association still hunting for a full-time England manager. Today, though, Leicester City's Peter Taylor was named as a stopgap solution.
It's an absolute honour for me to manage my country at senior level. It's all been cleared by the chairman and by the board, and I've assured them that it wouldn't affect my job at Leicester City.
It's now time for Taylor to prove himself. His credentials? He's a former England player. He had a successful 3 years managing the under-21 squad, and he's had an impressive start to the season at Leicester, briefly taking them to the top of the Premiership. But he's still untested at the highest level. As is Steve McClaren of Manchester United, who'll be assisting for the friendly against Italy next month. The FA's first choice for the short term was former England coach Bobby Robson, but Newcastle refused to let him go. For the long term, there's 3 possible candidates. Speculation the top job might go to a foreigner, either Lazio's manager Sven-Göran Eriksson or Arsenal's French boss Arsene Wenger. As for Terry Venables, the FA refused to say if he was in the running. Taylor's temporary appointment today, though, was well received by some fans.
I'm all in favour. I think he's a young manager. He's up and coming, and I think it's an excellent choice.
Probably temporarily, he'll probably do a good job, I would think. But obviously they need to get a permanent replacement in.
As Taylor stands in for now, the FA's confident of signing a permanent manager soon, with approaches to a chosen few being made this week. Guy Smith, ITN.
On the field, Aston Villa and Sunderland shared the points at Villa Park in today's only Premiership clash. One of Sunderland's best chances came from Kevin Phillips, who was denied by the woodwork. Despite several near misses by both sides, it ended 0-0. There was a different story north of the border where Hibernians hammered Hearts 6-2, Miksu Patalinas grabbing a hat-trick. There was more humiliation in the 80th minute when Zitelli's corner broke to O'Neill to make it 5. And Hibs' Russell Latapy got the last and 6th goal. And one other result, St Johnstone beat Rangers 2-1, leaving Rangers 12 points adrift of their arch-rival Celtic at the top of the table. In motor racing, Michael Schumacher's domination was complete when he won the final race in Malaysia and matched Nigel Mansell's record of 9 wins in a season. Britain's David Coulthard came a close second. Here's Philip Barker.
The Drivers' Championship already decided, but there was still drama at the Malaysian Grand Prix. Mika Häkkinen's flying start proved too fast, and a 10-second jump start penalty ended his chances of finishing the season with a victory. After the safety car was summoned following a shunt on the first lap, David Coulthard established a lead, and all seemed well until he had to make an unscheduled early pit stop to clear debris from an overheating engine. That gave Schumacher his chance, and he never looked back. Jenson Button's debut season in Formula 1 was ended by engine trouble, and Johnny Herbert's farewell to Grand Prix racing was ruined by suspension failure. He did well to avoid anything more serious than a few cuts and bruises, which left the checkered flag to Michael Schumacher. His 9th victory of the season clinched the Constructors' Championship for Ferrari, reason indeed for their team to let their hair down. Philip Barker, ITN Sport.
And that's the ITV Weekend News. From me and the rest of the team, goodbye and do have a good week.
Good evening. Well, whatever you've had today, you'll notice a change tomorrow as things turn bright and blustery with some showers, especially up in the north and west. You can see how the weather patterns are going to change. This is what we were faced with today. A weather front in the west has produced lots of heavy rain and strong winds too. That's going to come south and east overnight tonight, eventually clearing away from the southeast tomorrow morning, and that's going to have in its wake this blustery mixture of sunny spells and showers, quite a bit of brightness. Most of the showers will stay in the north and west. Let's look at tonight though, closer first of all. The rain's been in the west most of today. It is going to come further south and east overnight on that broad band of clouds, so crossing Scotland, getting in towards the south and east by the end of the night. Clear spells to follow it, but still with some showers around the coasts and hills in the west, and no danger of any frost tonight, much less cold than last night. So tomorrow, the weather front's still in the southeast through the morning, so a grey start for the southeast, but what's left of the rain will move away to the east, then we will all have a day of bright spells and blustery showers, the most frequent showers up in the north and west. Temperatures in the sunny spells around 13 or 14. Have a good day. Good night.
Power Gen. Power, whatever the weather.
A 50-50 gamble.
Final answer.
Duncan Brickley.
Yes.
He'd already won £250,000, and then he lost $218,000. The man who has to live with that decision. Live tomorrow.
You just lost.
On GMTV.
Time Tees weather, in association with Northern Electric and Gas.
Hello again, good evening. Well, cloud is continuing to increase across our region, as you can see from the satellite sequence. Some fairly well-broken cloud for most of this morning and this afternoon, but thicker cloud associated with a front. Now, over the next few hours, it will be pushing outbreaks of rain into the west and sweeping eastwards after that, so some damp weather for a time, but nowhere near as cold as last night. Temperatures falling to 7 Celsius, still quite breezy from the south or southwest. Tomorrow it's a mixed old bag. There's going to be a lot of cloud, but there's still the chance of some brightness, maybe if we're very lucky the odd bit of sunshine, but again showers, and if you catch one it will be on the heavy side. Temperatures up to 14 Celsius and yes, still breezy. Looking ahead to the details for Tuesday, still breezy, a bright start, rain later.
Time Tees weather, in association with Northern Electric and Gas.